The hall was full, warm light, music too low for conversation and too loud for thinking. Glasses clinked, laughter came easy, well-dressed people moving from side to side, as if that place were an extension of their own home. In the middle of the company gathering, an elderly black man walked in slowly, simple, out of place, trying not to draw attention. His name was Jose. Clean clothes but ordinary, the posture of someone who learned not to ask permission to exist. He stopped near the buffet, holding his plate carefully, looking around like someone just searching for a corner to stay in peace. Some employees sized him up from head to toe. It wasn't a look of curiosity, it was appraisal, and within seconds, the mood changed. One employee passed by him too fast. It wasn't an accident. A shoulder hit him, the plate tipped, and the pasta slid down Mr. Jose's shirt, hot, sticking to the fabric. Sauce hit the floor, and the sound of the plate hitting made a few heads turn at the same time. The laughter came contained, quiet laughter from people who don't want to look cruel, but still want to take part. Some covered their mouths to hide it. Some pulled out a phone without owning it. No one helped at first. "Watch where you're going, sir," the employee snapped, in a voice far too firm for someone who had bumped into him by accident. "This is the company party." Jose stood still, looking at his own shirt, then at the floor, as if he needed to understand whether it was real. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a scene. He just took a deep breath and tried to wipe the sauce with a napkin. "I'm only here because I was invited," he said softly, without aggression, like someone who still believes explaining will fix it. "Invited?" someone echoed from farther back, mocking. "You're lost, buddy." And that was when they treated Mr. Jose like a real intruder, as if he didn't even have the right to be there dirty, much less clean. The stain of sauce still marked his shirt when a woman from the event staff walked up. She didn't rush. She came too sure of herself, like someone who had already decided what she was going to do. She stopped in front of him, crossed her arms, and spoke loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "You shouldn't be here." The music kept playing, but the conversation around them dropped. People pretended to fuss with their drinks just to hear better. Jose lifted his eyes slowly, unhurried, like someone who had been stopped like that other times in life. "I was invited," he started, trying to keep his voice steady. "Invited by who?" she cut in, leaving no room. "This is a closed company gathering. Employees, partners. This isn't an open event." He opened his mouth to answer again, but they didn't let him. A man beside them gave a short laugh, almost a sigh. "Must have mixed it up with another party." Another added, in a tone that blended fake politeness with impatience, "Sir, people here are working. You just caused a disruption." Jose felt the eyes pressing down on him. They weren't shouts. It was worse. They were looks that pushed, that shrank you. He tried to explain again, said the name of the person who called him, but no one seemed interested in listening. "Regardless," the woman insisted, "you dropped food, you disrupted the service. I think you should leave." The word "leave" sounded too clean to hide the message. It wasn't about the plate. It wasn't about the party. It was about him not belonging in that place. Jose held the dirty napkin in his hands and felt the weight of the years settle across his back. Experience taught a lot, but it didn't teach you how to convince people who had already decided not to see you. And in that moment, everyone there acted like he was just the night's mistake, something to be handled quickly so the party could keep going. The discomfort spreads like a low noise. It doesn't become an open scene, but it doesn't go unnoticed either. Near the bar, two employees exchange looks and let out contained laughs. Not quite a laugh out loud, but it hurts the same. One of them mutters quietly, thinking no one will hear, "Look at this. Ruined the night." Others prefer not to look. They pretend to search for someone they know, adjust their phone, step away a few paces. No one speaks up for him. The collective silence weighs more than any direct insult. A man in a dark suit, clearly someone higher up, walks over. He doesn't ask what happened, he just scans the scene fast. The elderly man in a stained shirt, the impatient event staff woman, guests watching. To him, it's an image problem. "Let's deal with this now," he says, firm, not aggressive, but without any humanity. "We have important people here, investors. We can't let this kind of embarrassment continue." He makes a discreet gesture with his hand, calling over a security guard. He doesn't look at Jose when he speaks again. "Sir, we're going to ask you to leave. Afterward, we'll sort out this invitation issue." Afterward never comes when someone is treated like that. Jose sees it. He feels he stopped being a person and became an item out of place. The guard steps in beside him, respectful in tone, clear in intent. "This way, please." Some guests watch like they're witnessing something uncomfortable but necessary. The party can't stop. The music turns up a little, as if trying to cover the moment. And as Jose is escorted toward the exit, it becomes clear that for many of them, the problem wasn't pasta on a suit. It was his presence where they believed he shouldn't be. Jose walks toward the exit with the guard. There's no shove, no yelling. Just that clean, cold embarrassment that hurts more because it looks polite. His shirt, still stained with pasta, clings to his body, and he notices a few eyes tracking each step. Quick, curious, then looking away. No one stands up. No one asks if there's been a mistake. The unspoken agreement is to let it pass. Near the door, a woman from the staff takes the temporary badge he was wearing and says, without looking at him, "Must have been a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding is usually the word people use when no one wants to take responsibility. Jose holds the badge for a second like he might answer, but he chooses not to say anything. Experience teaches you when speaking won't change anything. In his late 60s, he had already learned to recognize that moment. The door closes behind him, muffling the music and the conversations. Inside, the waiters keep serving. The toasts continue. Someone laughs loudly near the stage. In seconds, the party returns to its normal rhythm. The episode becomes a disposable detail, something not worth remembering. Outside, Jose straightens his clothes as best he can. He looks at his own reflection in the glass and takes a deep breath. There's no open anger on his face, only that old mix of exhaustion and clarity. He understands the message delivered without words. In their logic, he didn't belong in there. No one threw him out yelling. No one had to justify it. And maybe that's why the injustice weighs even more, because when everyone accepts in silence the exclusion of someone, it stops being an isolated act and becomes a rule. Going back helps explain why Jose didn't react at the party. He had always been like that, discreet, observant, the kind of man who walks into a room, sits in a corner, and pays attention before saying anything. Not out of insecurity, but out of habit. Life taught him early that speaking less helps you hear more, and hearing more usually reveals a lot. Jose didn't come from wealth. He worked from a young age, started at the bottom, learned to respect every role inside a company because he had done nearly all of them. He didn't like the spotlight. He preferred to fix things. In meetings, he spoke little, but when he did, it was to point out what no one else had seen. Over the years, that's how he ended up around boardrooms, negotiation tables, major contracts. He never needed to raise his voice. Even as he grew older, he kept the same habits. Simple clothes, calm posture, sharp eyes. He didn't wear an expensive watch or insist on being recognized. To him, status was always a consequence, not a goal. People who knew him well understood. Jose knew numbers, people, and timing. He knew when to step in and when to wait. That night, he wasn't there by chance. He didn't get lost, didn't mix up the address, didn't walk in by mistake. He was used to that kind of environment, that language, that silent power game. He just didn't feel the need to show it. While others spoke loudly to look important, Jose always chose to watch. That was how he saw what others ignored, and it was exactly that posture, the same one that made him underestimated that night, that throughout his life opened doors no one ever saw opening. Jose's connection to that company went back long before the party, before the shiny badges and rehearsed speeches. When the business was still just a rough idea sketched on paper, he was the one who believed first. He didn't appear in photos, didn't sign flashy emails, but he was there in the decisions that kept the company standing when almost everything went wrong. In the early years, Jose helped structure contracts, opened doors with partners who trusted his word more than polished presentations. In critical moments, he put in his own money when no one else wanted to take the risk. He didn't demand a spotlight, didn't ask for a title, didn't want a glass office. He chose to stay behind the scenes, watching from a distance, guiding when called. As time passed, the company grew, new managers arrived, names were forgotten. Jose never minded. He knew exactly what his role was and the real weight of his involvement. Documents, old agreements, clauses few people knew. Everything had passed through his hands at some point. It was a solid connection, quiet, but decisive. That night, Jose wasn't there to celebrate. It wasn't nostalgia either. He had been invited to be there, up close, for the signing of an important contract that would change the company's future. An agreement that depended on his presence, even if almost no one knew it. While he was treated like an intruder, Jose watched faces, listened to words, observed the behavior of the people now running the business he helped build. He knew that night wouldn't end the way it started. Not out of revenge, but because the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way to show up. Inside the hall, the music stays loud and the conversations return to a lively tone. Glasses are raised, smiles traded, and executives move with the confidence of people who believe everything is already settled. The contract on the table is treated like a win in advance. $1 million deal, able to reposition the company in the market, attract new investors, and secure generous bonuses for the people running the night. One director says, in a low voice, that it's just a formality. Another laughs, saying the party is already the celebration of the signature. No one shows real urgency. The mood is absolute certainty. What few notice or choose to ignore is that the document isn't complete yet. One signature is missing, one final approval written into a specific clause, known by a few and forgotten by many. An assistant checks the clock for the third time. She quietly asks if the person responsible for that step has arrived. The answer is vague. He'll show up soon. The music rises, the subject changes, and the concern is smothered by the noise of celebration. After all, who would imagine someone that important wouldn't be there from the beginning? Meanwhile, outside, Jose finishes cleaning his clothes the best way he can. He shows no hurry, no visible outrage. He only watches the movement through the glass door, aware that inside everyone believes the company's future is guaranteed. What no one there seems to realize is that that future depends on the exact person they just threw out. The party goes on, but something essential still hasn't reached the table. The mood inside the hall shifts almost imperceptibly. The music continues, but the conversations no longer flow as lightly. One of the investors, seated at the main table, flips through the contract with more attention than before. He scans the pages, checks clauses, stops at a blank signature. He lifts his head and asks, calm, almost procedural, "And Mr. Jose?" The name lands in the air like something out of place. Some executives glance at each other, confused. One answers too quickly, saying everything is already in motion. The investor doesn't raise his voice, but he asks again, more direct now, "I need to speak with him before I sign. Where is he?" Silence begins to spread. The event staff trade tense looks. One assistant checks messages on her phone. Another steps away discreetly to confirm something. The name Jose starts moving in whispers, and no one can clearly connect that simple name to something so decisive. Some vaguely remember an elderly man who was there earlier. Others frown, trying to understand why this was never mentioned before. Little by little, the certainty that ruled the room begins to crack. There are no shouts, no alarm. Just the uncomfortable realization that someone essential isn't present. The investor crosses his arms and waits without showing impatience. The party continues, but it's no longer celebration. It's waiting. And for the first time all night, someone asks in a low voice whether the elderly man removed minutes earlier wasn't exactly the Mr. Jose everyone is now looking for. The hall doesn't fall silent immediately. First, the conversations fade. Then they stop completely. The music sounds too loud for a room that, minutes earlier, was confident. One executive returns from outside with a pale face. He doesn't announce anything. He only looks toward the main table, like someone confirming something he wished he hadn't understood. The information spreads without being said out loud. Someone whispers. Another confirms with a short nod. Slowly, everyone understands the same thing. Mr. Jose wasn't a lost guest, or a retired employee who wandered in by mistake. He was the owner of the partner company, the man whose signature validated the million-dollar contract everyone was waiting for. The weight of the revelation doesn't come as shock, but as shame. Some look away. Others stare at the floor. The memory of the spilled food, the disguised shove, the quiet escort to the door returns like a short, uncomfortable film. No one laughs now. No one comments. The fear isn't losing the party. It's facing the consequences of what they did. The investor stays seated, serious, watching every reaction. He doesn't accuse anyone. He doesn't raise his voice. He only says calmly, "Without Mr. Jose, there is no deal." The sentence seals the atmosphere. The party is officially interrupted, even if no one announces it. What remains in the air is the late awareness that the humiliation wasn't only moral, it was a serious mistake, made in front of the wrong person. Jose comes back through the same corridor as before, but now through the front entrance. The music has been turned off. There's no applause and no announcements. He is clean, his simple clothes adjusted, his face calm, the face of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. At his side, only one person from the staff walks with him in silence, a few steps behind, not daring to start a conversation. When he enters the hall, all eyes turn to him at once. Not out of spontaneous respect, but out of embarrassment. Jose walks slowly, without hurry, observing the room like someone who has been there many times, even when unnoticed. He stops near the main table and waits for everyone to settle. He doesn't ask for silence. The silence is already there. He introduces himself directly, without detours, giving only his full name and the company he represents. He doesn't mention what happened earlier. He doesn't bring up the pasta, the shove, the removal. His voice is firm but low, the voice of someone who learned over time that maturity is also knowing when not to raise the tone. Some executives avoid meeting his eyes. Others start to form an apology that never comes out. Jose listens to everything with attention, but he doesn't react. His calm posture exposes, without words, the contrast between the man treated as disposable minutes earlier and the man now holding the most important decision of the night. The party doesn't restart. The mood won't allow it. Jose stands there, occupying a space that had always been his, even when they pretended it wasn't. Jose never raises his voice. He waits until everyone is paying attention, and then speaks with the same calm he had when he walked in. He says he was there earlier, that he was mistaken for someone who didn't belong in that space, and that he was publicly embarrassed in front of employees and guests. He doesn't use strong adjectives. He doesn't accuse names. He only describes the facts in the exact order they happened. As he speaks, some faces tighten, others drop their gaze. Jose makes it clear he isn't there to create a scandal, but that he can't ignore what happened. He says that episode revealed much more than an isolated mistake. It showed how people are treated when they seem invisible, when they don't display a title, a badge, or the right appearance. He explains that because of that, he doesn't feel comfortable going forward with signing the contract that night. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't bargain. He simply states his decision. The silence weighs more than any shouting. One executive tries to justify it, saying it was a misunderstanding, but Jose doesn't debate. He only says serious environments are built with posture, not excuses. The suspension of the contract spreads quickly through the hall. What had been celebration turns into concern. The company's reputation begins to crack right there, in front of everyone, not out of revenge, but because the truth was placed on the table without spectacle. The contract isn't signed that night. The decision is communicated objectively, without a dramatic announcement, but enough to change the mood for good. The party ends earlier than planned, guests leave in silence, and what had been celebration becomes a serious problem to be handled in the days ahead. Nothing happens right then, but everyone understands that something has been broken. After that, the consequences come in practical form. The company goes through internal reviews, investigations, and changes that can't be postponed anymore. People who were used to deciding everything without being questioned lose space. Others leave positions they couldn't hold once the public image began to collapse. There is no announced witch hunt, only adjustments that make it clear mistakes are expensive. Jose doesn't follow that process closely. He keeps living the same way he arrived at that party, discreet, steady, consistent. He doesn't make public speeches. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't turn the episode into a stage. His position is clear from the start, and it doesn't change. For those who were there that night, the lesson stays marked without needing to be spoken out loud. Respect isn't negotiated in any contract, and worth isn't measured by clothes, age, or appearance. The story ends without applause, but with something more lasting, the certainty that dignity doesn't depend on anyone's permission.